Story 1. The Whispering Ram of Oregon. The air was sharp and cold, slicing through my jacket as Reggie and I descended into the canyon. Dawn had just broken, painting the eastern Oregon sky in streaks of pale orange and gray. The high desert stretched out around us, all jagged rock and sagebrush, with mist curling low in the creek bed like a living thing. Reggie, my English setter, trotted ahead, his nose to the ground, tail flicking with the promise of quail or chukar. This was our ritual, early mornings in the wild, just the two of us, chasing birds through the rugged folds of the earth. I'd been hunting these lands for years, but this canyon felt different. Maybe it was the way the mist clung to the ground thicker than usual, or the way the wind seemed to hum, low and unsteady, like a voice caught in the distance. Reggie didn't seem to notice. His ears perked, and he darted toward a cluster of boulders near the creek, his paws kicking up dust. I followed, my boots crunching on the frost-dusted gravel, shotgun slung over my shoulder. The world was quiet, save for the soft rush of water and Reggie's eager sniffs. Then he stopped. Froze, really. His body went rigid, hackles up, tail straight as an arrow. A low growl rumbled from his throat, not the playful yip he gave for birds, but something primal, almost feral. I squinted through the mist, trying to see what had spooked him. "Reggie, what is it, boy?" I whispered, my breath clouding in the chill. That's when I saw it. Around the edge of a boulder, half shrouded in fog, sat a bighorn sheep. A ram, its massive curled horns catching the faint light. It was perched on its haunches, legs folded beneath it like a dog or a cat, not like any wild animal I'd ever seen. Its head was tilted slightly, staring straight ahead, unblinking. Steam rose from its nostrils in slow, heavy puffs, like it was laboring to breathe. I froze, too, my hand tightening on the strap of my shotgun. Something about the scene was wrong. Unnaturally still, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Easy, Reg," I muttered, but he wasn't listening. His growl turned into a bark, sharp and panicked, then a snarl that made my skin prickle. Reggie never acted like this. He was a bird dog, trained to point and flush, not to lose his mind over a sheep. But this wasn't just a sheep. The way it sat, the way it didn't move, didn't even flinch at Reggie's noise, it wasn't right. I took a step closer, my boots scuffing the dirt. The ram's head twitched just a fraction, and its eyes locked onto mine. They were wide, too wide, and dark, like pools of ink. I felt a jolt, like I'd touched a live wire. Reggie's barking grew wilder, more desperate, his body trembling as he lunged forward, only to stop short as if some invisible barrier held him back. Then the ram moved, not its body, but its face. Its jaw sagged open, and a sound came out, a low, guttural moan, like something human, something in pain. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The ram's eyes stayed on me, unblinking, and it moaned again, louder, shaping words I couldn't quite make out. "Don't go," it rasped, the voice thin and broken, like it was forcing its way through a throat that wasn't meant to speak. "Please, don't." I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Reggie was a blur of fur and teeth, snapping at the air, his barks turning into something like a coyote's howl. The ram's face twisted, its features shifting in the dim light, looking less like an animal and more like something else, something human. Its eyes were wet now, glistening, and tears, actual tears, rolled down its matted fur. "Don't leave me," it whispered, the words clearer now, each one cutting into me like a blade. I stumbled back, my heel catching on a rock. The ram's head snapped up, and it screamed, a sound that started as a wail and grew into something else, something that shook the air, like wind roaring through a tunnel. Reggie yanked at his leash, nearly pulling me off my feet, and that broke the spell. I turned and ran, dragging Reggie with me, his claws scrabbling against the dirt. The ram's screams followed us, echoing off the canyon walls, growing louder, wilder, until they didn't sound like a voice anymore, but like the earth itself was tearing apart. We didn't stop until we reached the truck, a half-mile up the slope. My lungs burned, my legs shook, but I didn't dare look back. Reggie was panting, his eyes wide and wild, his fur still bristling. I threw open the door, shoved him inside, and climbed in after him, slamming the locks. For a long moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. That ram, it wasn't just an animal. It felt like there was something trapped inside it. Something that knew me, that wanted me to stay. When I got back to camp, my hunting partner, Jake, was waiting by the fire. He took one look at my face and asked what happened. I told him everything, the words spilling out in a rush. He listened, his face pale, and when I finished, he just nodded. "I've heard stories," he said quietly. "Old-timers talk about things in these canyons, things that don't belong." He didn't say more, and I didn't ask. We packed up and left that morning, the canyon fading into the rearview mirror. The next weekend, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to prove it wasn't real, that I'd imagined it. Reggie didn't want to go. He whined and pawed at the truck door, refusing to budge, but I couldn't leave it alone. The canyon looked the same, all rock and mist and silence, but the air felt heavier, like it was watching me. I left Reggie in the truck this time, his anxious barks muffled as I hiked down to the creek bed alone. The boulder was still there, looming in the fog. I approached slowly, my heart hammering, half expecting to see the ram again. But there was nothing, just the rock and the faint trickle of the creek. I circled it, my hand on my knife, looking for tracks, scat, anything to prove what I had seen. The ground was bare, the dirt undisturbed. It was like nothing had ever been there. Then I heard it, a whisper, so soft I thought it was the wind. "Don't go." My blood turned to ice. I spun around, scanning the mist, but there was no ram, no shape in the fog. Just that voice, faint and pleading, coming from nowhere and everywhere. I backed away, my knife trembling in my hand, and the whisper grew louder, more desperate. "Please, don't leave me." I ran, faster than before, my boots pounding the earth, the whisper chasing me up the slope. It wasn't until I reached the truck that it stopped, replaced by Reggie's frantic barks. I drove out of there, tires spitting gravel, and swore I'd never go back. Weeks passed, but the memory didn't fade. I couldn't sleep without seeing those eyes, hearing that voice. Reggie wasn't the same either. He'd growl at shadows, refuse to go near the woods. I started asking around, talking to other hunters, locals, anyone who knew the area. Most brushed it off, said I'd seen a sick animal or imagined it in the fog. But one old man, a rancher who'd lived in the high desert his whole life, listened to my story without laughing. He leaned in close, his eyes sharp, and said, "Some things get stuck out there. Not animals, not people, but something else. You felt it, didn't you? Like it was calling you." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He told me about the canyon, how it had always been a place where strange things happened. Hikers hearing voices, animals acting wrong, shadows moving where they shouldn't. He said the old stories called it a thin place, where the world wasn't quite right, where things could slip through. I didn't know what to make of it, but his words stuck with me, heavy as the mist in that creek bed. I tried to move on, to go back to my normal hunts, but something kept pulling me back to that canyon. Not a want, but a need, like an itch I couldn't scratch. 6 months later, I gave in. This time, I went at dusk, when the light was low and the world felt softer, less real. Reggie stayed home. He'd stopped eating, stopped wagging his tail, and I couldn't bear to drag him back. I went alone, armed with nothing but a flashlight and my knife, telling myself I just needed to see it one last time. The canyon was different at dusk. The shadows were longer, the air thicker, like it was holding its breath again. I found the boulder easily, its shape burned into my memory. I stood there, waiting, listening. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint rustle of sagebrush in the wind. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I heard it again, that whisper. "Don't go." It was closer this time, right behind me. I turned, my flashlight cutting through the dark, and there it was, the ram, sitting on its haunches just like before, its horns glinting in the beam of light. Its eyes were the same, wide and wet and too human, staring straight into me. My legs locked, my breath caught, and the whisper came again, louder, more insistent. "Please, don't leave me." The ram's face twisted, its jaw moving like it was trying to form more words, but all that came out was that moan, that horrible human moan. I don't know why I didn't run this time. Maybe I was too tired, too broken by the months of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. I stepped closer, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The ram didn't move, didn't blink, just kept whispering, its voice growing softer, sadder. "Stay, please." I was close enough now to see its face clearly, to see the way its features shifted, like a mask slipping. For a moment, I thought I saw someone I knew, someone I'd lost long ago, someone whose face I couldn't place, but whose eyes I'd never forget. I reached out, my hand trembling, not sure what I was doing. The ram's head tilted, and its moan became a scream, sharp and piercing, like a knife through my skull. The air around me roared, the wind kicking up dust and gravel, and I stumbled back, my flashlight dropping to the ground. The ram's eyes burned into me, and its voice was everywhere, inside my head, begging, pleading, screaming for me to stay. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the truck, only that I was driving, the canyon disappearing into the night behind me. The screams faded, but the whisper stayed, echoing in my mind. "Don't leave me." I haven't been back since. I don't hunt anymore. Reggie died a month later, curled up in his bed like he'd given up. I see those eyes every night, hear that voice in the quiet moments. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I hear it again, calling me back to that canyon, to that ram, to whatever it was that looked at me and saw something it needed. I don't know what it was. I don't want to know. But I know it's still there, waiting. And I know deep down that one day I might go back. Story 2, Night of the Hog Hunters. The air hung heavy with the damp chill of dusk as my older brother Caleb and I trudged deeper into Alabama's Sipsey wilderness. Our backpacks bounced against our shoulders, stuffed with camping gear for a weekend escape. I was 12, Caleb 16, and this was our first time venturing into the wild without Dad. The forest loomed around us, a maze of gnarled oaks and pines draped in Spanish moss, their branches knitting together to choke out the fading light. The path was narrow, barely a suggestion of packed dirt winding through the undergrowth. Every snap of a twig underfoot echoed like a warning. We'd been hiking for hours, the map crinkling in Caleb's hands as he led the way to a clearing we'd scouted on a previous trip. The plan was simple: set up camp, build a fire, and spend 2 nights under the stars. The Sipsey was known for its beauty: craggy cliffs, hidden waterfalls, and stretches of forest so dense it felt like stepping into another world. But it was also known for its hogs, feral, mean, and big enough to make you rethink wandering too far from the trail. Dad had drilled it into us: stay alert, keep your food sealed, and don't mess with the wildlife. The clearing came into view just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky a bruised purple. We dropped our packs and got to work. Caleb hammered tent stakes into the ground while I gathered kindling. The forest was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. It felt peaceful, almost sacred, like we were the only souls for miles. That's when we heard the crunch of boots. I froze, a bundle of sticks in my arms. Caleb looked up, his hammer pausing mid-swing. 2 figures emerged from the trees, stepping into the clearing like they'd been waiting for us. They were men, older than Caleb, maybe in their 30s, with greasy hair plastered to their scalps, and clothes that looked like they hadn't seen a wash in weeks. One carried a rifle slung over his shoulder. The other had a machete strapped to his belt. Their eyes locked onto us, unblinking, like predators sizing up prey. "Y'all seen any hogs out here?" the one with the rifle asked. His voice was low, gravelly, and didn't match the forced smile on his face. Caleb stood, slowly, brushing dirt off his hands. "Not today," he said, keeping his tone steady. "Just setting up camp." The second man, the one with the machete, tilted his head, his gaze flicking between us and our gear. "Good spot you got here," he said. "Real private." I shifted closer to Caleb, my heart thudding. Something about these guys felt wrong. Their stares lingered too long, their questions too pointed. Caleb must have felt it too, because his hand rested on the pocket knife clipped to his belt. "Plenty of hogs around," the rifle guy said, stepping closer. "We're hunting tonight. You boys hear anything, you let us know, yeah?" "Sure," Caleb said, his voice tight. "We'll keep an ear out." The men exchanged a look, then turned and melted back into the trees. The forest swallowed them whole, leaving only the faint crunch of leaves in their wake. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "They creeped me out," I whispered. Caleb didn't answer right away. He just stared at the spot where they'd disappeared, his jaw clenched. "Let's get the tent up," he finally said, "and stay sharp." We worked fast, the earlier calm replaced by a gnawing unease. The fire crackled to life as darkness settled over the clearing, the flames casting long shadows that danced across the trees. We ate a quick dinner, peanut butter sandwiches and granola bars, keeping our voices low. Every rustle in the bushes made me jump. Caleb kept his knife close, and I noticed he'd positioned our tent so the entrance faced the trail. "Think they're gone?" I asked, poking at the fire. "Hope so," Caleb muttered. "But we're not taking chances. Sleep light tonight." I nodded, though sleep felt like a distant dream. We crawled into the tent, zipping it shut behind us. The forest was louder now, crickets chirping, branches creaking in the wind. I lay on my sleeping bag, staring at the nylon ceiling, my flashlight clutched in one hand. Caleb's breathing was steady beside me, but I knew he wasn't asleep. Not yet. Hours passed, the night growing thicker, heavier. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Caleb's hand was on my shoulder, shaking me awake. "Listen," he hissed. I froze. At first I heard nothing but the usual forest hum. Then it came, a low, frantic barking, sharp and wild, cutting through the dark. Dogs. Not one or two, but a pack, their yips and howls bouncing off the trees. And beneath the noise something worse. Human voices, distant but getting closer, shouting words I couldn't make out. My stomach twisted. "Caleb!" "Shh," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Just lay still. Don't make a sound." The barking grew louder, more aggressive, like the dogs had caught a scent. The voices were clearer now, gruff, angry, punctuated by the occasional curse. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing my heart to stop pounding so loud. The tent felt like a trap, its thin walls no protection at all. I pictured those men from earlier, their greasy hair and cold eyes, and my skin crawled. Caleb shifted beside me, his hand on his knife. "If they get too close," he whispered, "we're moving. Follow me, no questions." I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. The dogs were close now, their barks sharp enough to make my ears ring. The voices were right behind them, shouting things like, "Keep up!" and "They're around here somewhere." My mind raced. Were they talking about hogs? Or us? Time stretched, each second an eternity. I don't know how long we lay there, frozen, listening as the chaos circled our camp. Then a new sound, a low, deliberate crunch of footsteps just outside the tent. My breath caught. Caleb's hand clamped over my wrist, his grip like iron. "Don't move," he mouthed. The footsteps stopped. A beam of light sliced through the tent's fabric, sweeping back and forth. I bit my lip to keep from whimpering. The dogs were quieter now, their barks replaced by low growls. Then a voice, loud, too close, shattered the silence. "Where y'all at?" My blood turned to ice. Caleb's grip tightened, his eyes wide in the faint glow of the flashlight beam. Another voice joined the first, lower, but just as menacing. "Check the tent. They ain't far." I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but lie there like a cornered animal. Caleb must have sensed it because he leaned close, his lips brushing my ear. "Stay calm. We're getting out of this." The footsteps circled closer. I heard the clink of metal, rifles, maybe shotguns, then a sharp crack like a branch snapping underfoot. My heart hammered so loud I was sure they'd hear it. Caleb's hand moved to his backpack, where I knew he kept a satellite phone Dad had insisted we bring. He didn't dare pull it out, not yet, not with them so close. Another shout, followed by a deafening bang, a gunshot, then another. The shots weren't aimed at us. They were too high, ripping through the trees above, but they were close enough to make my ears ring. Caleb's face hardened. "Nobody who comes up on a random camp in the middle of the night has good intentions," he whispered, more to himself than to me. The dogs erupted again, their barks wild and frenzied. The men were shouting now, their voices overlapping in a chaotic mess. I caught fragments. "Spread out! They're here somewhere!" And my stomach lurched. They weren't hunting hogs. They were hunting us. Caleb's hand was on the tent zipper now, moving slowly, silently. "When I say go," he whispered, "we crawl out the back. Stay low, head for the trees, don't look back." I nodded, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold my flashlight. The light beams were still sweeping the clearing, the men's voices growing louder, closer. I pictured them surrounding us, their rifles glinting in the moonlight. My chest tightened like I couldn't get enough air. Then, a miracle. A new sound cut through the night. Sirens, faint at first, then louder, piercing the forest. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees, casting eerie shadows on the tent. The dogs went berserk, their barks turning to panicked yelps. The men's shouts turned frantic, then faded, swallowed by the wail of the sirens. Caleb grabbed the satellite phone, his fingers fumbling as he powered it on. "Forest Service," he whispered. "I called them when the dogs started. Must have been close." I stared at him, my brain struggling to catch up. He'd called for help. He'd saved us. The sirens grew louder, tires crunching on the dirt trail nearby. The men's voices were gone now, replaced by the crackle of radios and the shouts of rangers. "This is the Forest Service. Identify yourselves," a voice boomed. Caleb unzipped the tent and crawled out, pulling me with him. We stumbled into the clearing, our flashlights shaking in our hands. The ranger's truck was parked at the edge of the trail, its lights bathing the forest in a harsh glow. Two officers stood by the vehicle, their hands on their holsters, scanning the trees. "Over here," Caleb called, waving his flashlight. The rangers spotted us and jogged over, their boots pounding the dirt. "You boys okay?" one asked, his face grim. "Yeah," Caleb said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Those guys, they weren't hunting hogs." The ranger nodded, his eyes narrowing. "We got a call about suspicious activity. Saw 5 men with dogs and guns hightail it into the woods when we showed up. You see where they went?" Caleb shook his head. "Just heard them. They were looking for us." The rangers exchanged a look. "Pack up your gear," the second one said. "We're getting you out of here." We didn't argue. We tore down the tent in record time, stuffing our sleeping bags and supplies into our packs. The rangers stayed close, their flashlights sweeping the trees for any sign of the hunters. The dogs were gone, the forest quiet again, but the silence felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. We waited by the trail, our packs at our feet, as the rangers did a final sweep. The truck's headlights cut through the fog, guiding us back to safety. My legs felt like jelly, but I kept my eyes on Caleb, who stood tall despite the fear I knew he felt. When the rangers returned, they loaded our gear into the truck and drove us out of the Sipsey, the forest fading into the night behind us. We didn't talk much on the ride back. The rangers asked a few questions, jotting notes about the men, the dogs, the gunshots. I stared out the window, the trees blurring into a dark smear. My mind replayed the night, the greasy-haired men, the barking dogs, the shouts in the dark. We'd come out here for adventure, for freedom. Instead, we'd brushed against something dark, something that didn't belong in these woods. When we reached the ranger station, Caleb finally looked at me, his eyes tired but steady. "You okay, kid?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was. "Yeah, thanks to you." He ruffled my hair, a ghost of a smile on his face. "Let's not tell Dad about this one, yeah?" I managed a shaky laugh. "Deal." The rangers offered to drive us home, but Caleb said we'd wait for morning. We sat in the station, wrapped in the blankets, sipping hot cocoa from styrofoam cups. The forest was out there, vast and silent, holding its secrets. Somewhere in its depths, those men were still out there, their dogs at their heels, their rifles loaded. But for now, we were safe. Story 3. The Hunted Haven. My name is Elias Kane, and I'm a tracker, a man who knows the wild like the back of his hand. I have hunted everything from elk to mountain lions, always with respect for the land and the life I took. But nothing prepared me for the nightmare I stumbled into on that cursed island. They called it Driftbone Isle, a name whispered by sailors with dread, a place where ships vanished and men didn't return. I didn't believe the tales until I became one. It started with a storm. My small boat, caught in a squall off the Caribbean, was torn apart by waves like claws. I clung to a plank, salt stinging my eyes, until the current spat me onto a jagged shore. The island loomed under a moonless sky, its cliffs like teeth against the stars. I was soaked, shivering, but alive. My pack, miraculously, had washed up with me. Rope, a knife, a flint. I took stock, my breath steadying. I'd survived worse, or so I thought. The jungle was dense, a tangle of vines and shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I moved inland, seeking shelter, my boots sinking into the damp earth. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of rot and something sharper, metallic. I found a cave, its mouth hidden by ferns, and crawled inside to wait out the night. That's when I heard it, a low rhythmic hum like a heartbeat pulsing through the stone. It wasn't natural. Nothing about this place was. Morning brought no relief. The jungle was silent. No birds, no rustle of life, just that oppressive quiet. I set out to find fresh water, my knife in hand, senses sharp. Tracks caught my eye. Boot prints, fresh, deliberate. Someone else was here. I followed them, cautious, my pulse quickening. The trail led to a clearing, and there it was, a mansion of all things rising from the jungle like a mirage. Marble columns, tall windows, a structure that didn't belong. My gut screamed to turn back, but thirst and curiosity pulled me forward. The door was unlocked, creaking open to reveal a grand hall. Polished floors gleamed under a chandelier of bone. Animal, I hoped. A man stood at the far end, tall and lean, dressed in a tailored coat that looked out of place in the tropics. His hair was silver, his eyes colder than the sea that had nearly killed me. "Welcome, Elias Kane," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he'd known me forever. "I am Victor Drawell. You've arrived at my haven." I froze. "How do you know my name?" He smiled, thin and sharp. "The island knows its guests. You're a hunter, yes? A man of skill, I admire that." I didn't like his tone, smooth as a predator's stalk. He invited me to sit, gesturing to a table laid with food, fruit, bread, smoked meat. My stomach growled, but I stayed standing. "What is this place?" I asked. "My sanctuary," Drawell said, circling the table. "I came here years ago, seeking a challenge worthy of my talents. Hunting beasts grew tiresome. They lack imagination. So I turned to a more fitting prey." My blood ran cold. "What kind of prey?" His eyes glinted. "The kind that thinks, plans, fights back. Men like you, Elias. The island is my hunting ground, and you are my guest, for now." I gripped my knife, still sheathed at my belt. "You're insane." "Am I?" He stepped closer, voice low. "The world is divided into those who hunt and those who are hunted. You've always been the former, but here you'll learn what it means to be the latter. Survive 3 days, and you may leave. Fail, and you'll feed the island." I didn't wait for more. I bolted for the door, his laughter chasing me into the jungle. The trees closed around me, branches snagging my clothes like greedy fingers. I ran until my lungs burned, then crouched behind a gnarled root, listening. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed in the distance. He was coming. Day one was a blur of instinct. I moved fast, covering my tracks, doubling back to confuse him. The jungle was a maze, but I'd navigated worse. I found a stream, drank deeply, and set to work. Using vines and a fallen branch, I rigged a snare near a narrow path, sharp sticks buried in the dirt. If Drow followed, he'd regret it. Night fell, and I climbed a tree, tying myself to a branch with my rope. Sleep was impossible. The jungle felt alive, watching. That hum was back, louder now, thrumming in my chest. Dawn broke, and I checked my snare. It was sprung, but empty. The sticks snapped like kindling. Droll had found it and left a message. Carved into a nearby tree was a single word: clever. My stomach twisted. He was toying with me. I needed to slow him down. I remembered a trick from my days in the Rockies, a deadfall trap heavy enough to crush bone. I found a boulder, balanced it on a ledge above a game trail, and rigged it with vines to collapse when triggered. It took hours, my hands raw, but it was done. I marked the spot in my mind and moved on, heading for higher ground. From a ridge, I saw the mansion in the distance, its lights glowing like eyes. He was there, waiting, but I wouldn't make it easy. The second day, he got closer. I heard his dogs, big snarling beasts, crashing through the underbrush. I scrambled up a cliff, my fingers scraping rock, and hid in a crevice. The dogs passed below, their handlers' whistle sharp in the air. I waited, heart pounding, until silence returned. Then I saw it, one of the dogs, caught in my deadfall. The boulder had rolled, pinning its leg. Its whimpers echoed, and I felt a pang of guilt. But this was survival. I moved on, deeper into the jungle. That night, I set another trap, a pit, shallow but lined with sharpened sticks I carved with my knife. I covered it with leaves, praying it would hold. The hum was unbearable now, vibrating in my skull, making my thoughts sluggish. I wondered if the island itself was against me, urging me to falter. I shook it off, tying myself into another tree to rest. In the dark, I heard Draw's voice, carried on the wind. "You're doing well, Elias, but not well enough." The third day broke with a gray dawn. My body ached, my hands blistered from carving and climbing. I checked the pit, empty, but the leaves were disturbed. He'd found it, avoided it. I was running out of time. My traps were failing, and he was closing in. I needed to change the game. Instead of running, I'd draw him out. I backtracked to the stream, leaving a false trail, broken branches, scuffed dirt. Then I doubled back, circling to a spot overlooking the mansion. If I could get inside, maybe I could turn the hunter into the hunted. I waited, hidden in the ferns, as the sun sank. The dogs were quieter now, one gone, the others cautious. Then I saw him, Drow, moving like a shadow, his rifle glinting. He followed my false trail, pausing at the stream. I held my breath, my knife ready. He stopped, head tilting as if sensing me. Then he turned, eyes locking onto my hiding spot. I froze, but it was too late. "Elias," he called, voice calm. "You're bold. I like that." I broke cover, sprinting for the mansion. The dogs howled, their paws pounding behind me. I reached the wall, scrambling over, my hands slipping on the stone. Inside, the halls were a labyrinth, portraits of stern men staring from the walls. I ducked into a room, finding a heavy candlestick better than nothing. Footsteps echoed closer. I pressed myself against the wall, waiting. Drawl entered, rifle raised. "You've made this entertaining," he said, "but it ends now." I swung the candlestick, catching his arm. The rifle clattered to the floor. We grappled, his strength surprising, his eyes wild with thrill. I drove my knee into his gut, breaking free, and grabbed the rifle. He laughed, blood on his lips. "Well played, Elias, but one of us must feed the island." "I'm not your prey," I growled, leveling the rifle. He raised his hands, still smiling. "Then finish it." I didn't hesitate. The shot rang out, and he crumpled, his eyes dimming. The dogs outside went silent. The hum in my head stopped. The air suddenly still. I stumbled to his room, collapsing onto the bed, my body spent. Sleep came, deep and dreamless. The island's weight lifting at last. Story 4, A Night of Terror in Colorado. The aspen forest glowed gold under the late afternoon sun, leaves quivering in the crisp Colorado breeze. My friends, Sarah, Mike, Ethan, and I, had been planning this hunting trip for months. We'd scouted this remote stretch of the Rockies, far from trails and cell service, for its promise of solitude and game. Our packs were heavy with gear, our rifles slung over our shoulders, and the air smelled of pine and earth. It felt like the perfect escape. By dusk, we'd set up camp in a small clearing, 3 tents, a fire pit, and a rope to hang our food out of reach of bears. The sky burned orange, then faded to a star-strewn black. We cooked a simple meal over the fire, the crackle of logs and the distant hoot of an owl the only sounds. Exhausted, we crawled into our tents, ready for an early start. Dawn broke cold and gray. Frost crusted the grass as we fanned out, rifles in hand, tracking signs of deer. Ethan spotted fresh tracks near a stream, and within an hour, we'd taken down a young buck. Mike and I field-dressed it, while Sarah and Ethan kept watch for predators drawn to the scent of blood. The work was methodical, almost meditative, until Sarah's sharp whisper cut through the silence. "Guys, look!" Across the clearing, maybe 50 yards away, stood 5 men. They hadn't been there moments before. No rifles, no gear, just dark jackets, jeans, and boots. They stood motionless, shoulder to shoulder, staring at us. Their faces were blank, eyes locked on our group like they were studying us. No one spoke. No one moved. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Hunters," Ethan muttered, but I shook my head. "Hunters don't just stand there silent, without weapons." Mike raised a hand, a cautious wave. The men didn't respond. They just watched. "Let's get back to camp," I said, my voice low. We hoisted the deer onto a pole, carrying it between us, and moved quickly. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see those men trailing us, but the forest was empty. By the time we reached camp, the unease had settled into my bones. We hung the deer, cleaned our tools, and tried to shake it off. "Probably just locals," Mike said, forcing a laugh. "Weird ones, but harmless." Sarah didn't look convinced, and neither was I. Those blank stares hadn't felt harmless. Night fell fast, the temperature plunging. We ate dinner in near silence, the fire casting long shadows that danced across the trees. The forest felt heavier now, the quiet not peaceful, but oppressive. I zipped myself into my tent, rifle close, and tried to sleep. Hours later, I woke to a sound. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling the camp. My heart pounded. I held my breath, straining to listen. The steps paused, then started again. Closer now. A faint metallic rasp followed. A tent zipper, not mine. It was coming from Sarah's tent. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, my hands shaking. The footsteps stopped. Silence, thick and suffocating, pressed in. Then a scream. Sarah's voice raw with terror. I scrambled out of my tent, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the dark. "Sarah!" I shouted. Mike and Ethan were already out, their faces pale. Sarah stumbled from her tent, eyes wide, pointing at the canvas wall. In the dim light, I saw it. Words scrawled in a dark, glistening smear that looked like blood. "You shouldn't have come." On the ground inside her tent lay a twisted figure, a doll made of twigs and twine, its face smudged with ash, eyes crudely carved into the wood. "What the hell is this?" Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. I swept my flashlight around the camp, but the darkness swallowed the beam, the footsteps, the zipper, the message. It wasn't a prank. Someone or something was out there. "We need to leave," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Now." But it was pitch black. The forest a maze of shadows. We'd never make it to the truck in the dark, not with whatever this was. We agreed to pack up at first light and take turns keeping watch. I volunteered first, sitting by the fire with my rifle across my lap, every rustle of leaves spiking my pulse. The night dragged on, endless. I kept my eyes on the tree line, the flashlight beam darting at every snap of a twig. Mike took over at 3 a.m., his face grim. "Don't fall asleep," he muttered, as if I could. I crawled into my tent, but sleep never came. My mind replayed those men's faces, their unnatural stillness. When dawn finally grayed the sky, we moved fast, tearing down tents and stuffing packs. The air felt wrong, too still, like the forest was holding its breath. Then we heard it, a low, eerie whistle, sharp and piercing, coming from the trees. It wasn't one note but 5, overlapping in a chilling harmony. My blood went cold. "Move over," I hissed. We grabbed our packs, abandoning half our gear, and started for the trail. The whistling grew louder, closer, and then they appeared. Those same 5 men, stepping out from the shadows. Their faces weren't blank now. They were twisted, eyes burning with something feral, something wrong. One held a club, another a knife that glinted dully. The tallest gripped a rusted machete, its blade chipped and stained. They didn't speak. They just whistled, a sound that burrowed into my skull and charged. We ran, crashing through the underbrush, branches clawing at our faces. My pack bounced against my back, slowing me down, but I didn't dare stop. Sarah stumbled, and I hauled her up, her breath coming in sobs. The whistling followed, relentless, always just behind us. We veered off the trail, plunging deeper into the forest. No plan, just panic. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but stopping wasn't an option. We found a ravine, its walls slick with mud, and slid down into it, crouching low among the roots and rocks. The whistling stopped, replaced by the crunch of boots overhead. Shadows moved above us, slow and deliberate, searching. I clamped a hand over my mouth to muffle my breathing, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. Sarah's eyes were wide with fear, Ethan's knuckles wide around his rifle. Mike pressed a finger to his lips, his face slick with sweat. The footsteps circled, paused, then moved on. We stayed there, frozen as the hours crawled by, the forest silent except for the occasional snap of a branch. When daylight finally broke, we climbed out, muddy and exhausted. The forest was empty, no sign of the men, no whistling. We didn't speak as we limped back to the trail, our truck still where we'd left it. The drive to the ranger station was a blur. We told them everything: the men, the message, the doll, the ambush. They sent a team to search, but days later, they found nothing. No footprints, no blood, no doll. Our camp was gone like it had never been there. That night still haunts me. Those men, their faces, the way they moved. There was something unnatural about them, something that didn't belong in this world. Story 5. The Cursed Ram of Hollow Gully. The air was sharp with frost that October morning, the kind of cold that bites at your knuckles and makes your breath hang in clouds. I'd been hunting upland birds in Oregon's back country for years, just me and Reggie, my wire-haired pointer with a nose sharper than a razor. We'd traipse through river valleys and scrubby hills, chasing pheasant and quail, the world reduced to the crunch of boots on gravel and the soft pant of Reggie's excitement. That day, we set out before dawn, the sky a bruised purple, the stars still clinging to the edges. I loved these moments, alone with my dog, the wilderness stretching out like it belonged to us. The river valley we picked was one I'd scouted before, a long snaking gash in the earth, flanked by crumbling shale and gnarled junipers. It was silent, save for the faint gurgle of the creek at its heart. Reggie bounded ahead, his tail a metronome, sniffing out game trails while I followed, my shotgun slung over my shoulder. The light was just breaking, painting the rocks gold, and I felt that familiar thrill. The hunt, the quiet, the bond between me and my dog. Nothing else mattered. We were halfway down a steep gully when Reggie stopped dead. His body went rigid, ears pricked, nose twitching, like he'd caught a scent that didn't belong. I froze too, scanning the rocky creek bed below. Nothing moved. No birds, no wind, just an eerie stillness that made the hair on my neck prickle. "What is it, boy?" I whispered, but Reggie didn't look at me. His hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his throat. I tightened my grip on the shotgun and stepped forward, my boots crunching louder than they should have in the quiet. Around a boulder, I saw it, a huge bighorn sheep, its curved horns gleaming in the dawn light. It was sitting on its folded back legs like a dog might, its body unnaturally still. I'd seen bighorns before, skittish things that bolted at the first whiff of danger. This one didn't move. It just stared straight ahead, its eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Reggie's growl deepened, his body low and tense, like he was ready to lunge. I hissed at him to stay, my own pulse starting to climb. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. I edged closer, keeping the boulder between me and the ram. Its fur was matted, its ribs sharp under its hide, like it hadn't eaten in weeks. But it wasn't the ram's condition that made my stomach twist. It was the way it sat, so human-like, so deliberate. I'd never seen an animal hold itself like that. I whispered Reggie's name again, trying to call him back, but he wouldn't budge. His eyes were locked on the ram, his lips curled back to show teeth. I stepped out from behind the boulder, my shotgun half raised, more for comfort than intent. The ram's head didn't turn, but I could see its face now. Its nostrils quivered, its mouth trembling like it was trying to form words. And its eyes, God, its eyes. They were wet, leaking tears that ran down its muzzle, glinting in the weak light. It looked like it was weeping, like a person might, the kind of crying that comes from deep, bone-shaking fear. My mouth went dry. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. Then it spoke. "Don't go," it said, its voice a raw, childlike whimper. "Please don't go." The words hit me like a punch. They weren't in my head. They came from the ram's mouth, clear as day, trembling and desperate. Reggie's growl turned into a snarl, his body shaking with rage or fear or both. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The ram's eyes locked onto mine, wide and glassy, and it spoke again, louder this time, a frantic edge to its voice. "Don't go. Please, don't leave me here." My heart slammed against my ribs. This wasn't right. Animals don't talk. They don't cry. They don't beg. But this thing was doing all three, its voice cracking like it was on the edge of breaking. I took a step back, my boots slipping on loose shale, and the ram's head jerked toward me. Its mouth opened wider, tears streaming faster, and it screamed, a sound that started human but twisted into something else, a deafening roar that echoed off the gully walls. Reggie lunged forward, barking wildly, and only then did I snap out of it. I grabbed his collar, dragging him back as the ram's scream grew louder, filling the air with a weight that made my ears ring. I stumbled backward, my eyes still locked on the ram. It hadn't moved from its spot, but its body was shaking now, its legs twitching like it was fighting to stand. "Don't go!" it wailed again, and this time I saw its mouth move, saw the unnatural way its jaw worked, like something was forcing the words out. Reggie yanked against me, his barks sharp and frantic, and I let him pull me away. I broke eye contact with the ram, and the moment I did, the pressure in my chest lifted like a weight had been yanked off me. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't think, just hauled myself and Reggie up the gully, my boots slipping on rocks, my breath ragged. The ram's screams followed us, fainter but no less desperate, until we crested the ridge and the sound cut off like someone had flipped a switch. I collapsed against a tree, gasping, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold the shotgun. Reggie pressed against my leg, whining, his eyes darting back toward the gully. I don't know how long we sat there, but the sun was higher when I finally got my legs under me. I half expected the ram to come charging up the slope. The valley was silent again, just the creek's faint murmur and the rustle of leaves. I made it to my truck, Reggie glued to my side, and peeled out of there, the tires spitting gravel. The whole drive home, my mind churned. What the hell was that? A hallucination? A trick of the wind? But Reggie had heard it too. His reaction was real, his fear as raw as mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ram's face, those weeping eyes, that trembling mouth. Its voice played on a loop in my head, pleading, begging. The more I thought about it, the worse it got. It wasn't just an animal acting strange. It felt like something was trapped inside it. Something human, something terrifying. Like a person's spirit had been stitched into that body, screaming to get out. I went back to the gully a week later, against my better judgment. I didn't bring Reggie this time. Couldn't put him through that again. The valley looked normal in the daylight, the creek glinting under the sun, the rocks, just rocks. I hiked down to where I'd seen the ram, my heart in my throat the whole way. There was no sign of it, no tracks, no matted fur caught on the brush, nothing. But when I reached the spot by the boulder, I found something that made my blood run cold, a single, deep scratch in the rock, like something had clawed at it in desperation. It was fresh, the edges sharp and clean. I haven't been back since. I still hunt, but I stick to open fields now, places where the air doesn't feel like it's watching you. Reggie's still my shadow, but he gets jumpy near steep valleys like he remembers. I don't talk about what happened, not to friends, not to family. They think I'm crazy, and maybe I am. But I know what I saw, what I heard. That ram wasn't just an animal. Something was in it, something that didn't belong, something that's still out there in that gully, waiting. I keep thinking about its voice, that childlike plea. Don't go. Part of me wonders what would have happened if I'd stayed, if I'd tried to help. But the rest of me knows the truth. If I'd lingered a second longer, I might not have come back at all. Story 6. The Stalker in the Snow. The snow came down in sheets, heavy and relentless, blanketing the Pennsylvania woods behind my grandfather's farmhouse. It was late November, deer season, and I'd been looking forward to this hunt for weeks. The air bit at my knuckles as I adjusted my grip on the rifle, my breath fogging in the pre-dawn chill. I'd settled into my spot, a natural blind of tangled briars and a fallen oak, just beyond the clearing where the fields met the forest. The world was quiet, save for the soft hiss of snow and occasional creak of branches bending under its weight. I was alone, or so I thought. My grandfather had stayed back at the house, nursing a bad knee and promising to join me later if the weather eased. The plan was simple: sit, wait, watch for deer. I'd done it 100 times growing up, learning the land's rhythms, the way shadows played tricks in the half-light. But today felt different. The storm had turned the familiar woods into something alien, the trees looming like silent sentinels in the haze. By mid-morning, the snow had thickened, cutting visibility to a dozen yards. I squinted through the scope, scanning the ridge across the clearing. Nothing, no deer, no movement, just white on white, the world swallowed by the blizzard. I shifted, my boots crunching the fresh powder, and that's when I heard it, a faint, deliberate crunch from somewhere behind me. I froze. The sound wasn't right. Deer don't move like that, not with that slow, heavy rhythm. It was too measured, too human. I turned my head, keeping my body still, and listened. Another crunch, closer now, maybe 20 yards out. My pulse quickened, but I told myself it was probably my grandfather hobbling through the storm to check on me. He'd done it before, stubborn old man that he was. "Grandpa," I called softly, my voice swallowed by the wind. No answer, just another crunch, this one sharper, like a boot breaking through crusted snow. I tightened my grip on the rifle and peered into the swirling white. Nothing but shadows and the faint outline of trees. I waited, heart thudding, straining to hear over the storm. Then I saw it. On the far ridge, maybe 50 yards off, a shape that didn't belong. It was subtle at first, just a lump of something unnatural tucked behind a gnarled maple. I adjusted my scope, zeroing in. Camouflage fabric, worn and tattered, poked out from the tree's edge. My stomach twisted. That wasn't my grandfather. No one in our family wore gear like that. Mismatched, dull, no blaze orange. Every hunter in these parts knew the law. You wear orange, no exceptions. I kept my scope trained on the figure, my breath shallow. The lump shifted slightly, and I realized it was a person, crouched low, motionless. Were they watching me? The house? The thought sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The farmhouse sat empty behind me, its windows dark, the only light a faint glow from the porch. If someone was out here, in this storm, on our land, they weren't here for deer. I whistled, sharp and loud, cutting through the wind. The figure jolted, a sudden jerk of movement, and I caught a glimpse of a face, pale, unshaven, eyes wide with surprise. Whoever it was scrambled, shuffling to tuck the exposed fabric of their coat behind the tree. Too late. I'd seen them. They knew it. "Hey," I shouted, standing now, rifle still at my shoulder but not aimed. Not yet. "This is private land. You're trespassing." No response. The figure stayed low, but I could see them moving, trying to melt into the ridge. My gut screamed at me to close the distance, to confront them before they could slip away. I started forward, boots sinking into the snow, keeping the rifle ready, but pointed down. The storm made every step a fight, but I pushed through, my eyes locked on that spot. As I got closer, maybe 15 yards out, I saw him clearly. A man, lean and scruffy, his beard patchy and matted with snow. His gear was a mess, a faded camo jacket, jeans that looked too thin for the weather, and boots that were more duct tape than leather. No orange vest, no hat, nothing to mark him as a hunter following the rules. His eyes darted to me, then away like a cornered animal. "Who are you?" I demanded, stopping 10 yards off. Close enough to see his face, far enough to react if he tried anything. "What the hell are you doing out here?" He stood slowly, hands raised, but there was something off about his posture, too stiff, like he was forcing himself to look calm. I'm lost," he stammered, his voice rough, barely carrying over the wind. "Got separated from my group. Name's Tom." I didn't buy it. His eyes kept flicking toward the farmhouse, not me, and that name, Tom, felt like something he'd pulled out of thin air. "Lost, huh?" I said, stepping closer. "Where's your vest? Your gear? You know you can't hunt without orange." His face went pale and he fumbled for an answer. I must have dropped it. "Been out here a while, you know. Storm's bad." "Bullshit," I snapped. "You're on our land, hiding behind a tree, staring at our house. You're not hunting deer." He opened his mouth, but before he could spit out another lie, I heard another sound. Boots crunching fast, coming from the direction of the farmhouse. I turned my head just enough to see my grandfather trudging through the snow, his old Winchester slung over his shoulder. His face was grim, his bad knee forgotten in the moment. "Who's this?" Grandpa barked, his voice cutting through the storm like a blade. He stopped beside me, sizing up the stranger with a look that could curdle milk. "Says he's lost," I said, not taking my eyes off the man. "Says his name's Tom." The stranger's eyes widened, darting between us. He took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The ridge dropped off behind him into a steep gully. I swear, I didn't mean no harm," he said, his voice cracking. "Just trying to find my way." Grandpa snorted. "Find your way, my ass. You're camped out here like a damn vulture watching my house." He pointed toward the road, a faint line visible through the snow. "Start walking, now." The man hesitated, his hands twitching like he was weighing his options. I raised my rifle just enough to make a point. "Move," I said. He moved. We followed, keeping him in front of us as we trudged down to the road. The snow was coming down harder now, stinging my face, but I didn't care. My mind was racing, piecing together what I'd seen. That ridge gave a perfect view of the farmhouse, every window, every door. If we'd both been out hunting, Or if I hadn't noticed him, he could have slipped in, taken whatever he wanted. Maybe worse. When we reached the road, Grandpa pulled out his old flip phone and called the sheriff's office. The man stood there, head down, snow piling up on his shoulders. He didn't try to run, didn't say a word. Maybe he knew it was over. The deputy arrived 20 minutes later, his cruiser sliding on the icy road. He took one look at the stranger, then at us, and nodded. "Got a call about a trespasser?" "That's him," Grandpa said, pointing. "Caught him skulking on our land, no vest, no permit, making up stories about being lost." The deputy cuffed the man who didn't resist. As they led him to the cruiser, I caught his eye one last time. There was something cold there, something that made my skin crawl. Not fear, not anger, just a blank, calculating stare, like he was already planning his next move. They charged him with trespassing and stalking. Turns out he had a record. Petty theft, breaking and entering, nothing big, but enough to paint a picture. He hadn't done anything yet, not that we could prove, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd stopped something worse. That ridge, that view of the house, the way he'd been watching, it wasn't random. As the cruiser's taillights faded into the snow, I looked at Grandpa. He didn't say anything, just clapped me on the shoulder and headed back to the house. I stood there a moment longer, staring at the ridge where I'd first seen him. The storm was easing, the world growing quiet again. But the woods didn't feel the same anymore. Let's not meet again. Story 7. The Strange Man. In the woods, the snow fell in thick, silent flakes, blanketing the Michigan woods in a hush that swallowed sound. I sat in my tree stand, 20 feet off the ground, my breath fogging in the crisp November air. My rifle rested across my lap, scope fogged slightly from the cold. I'd been out here for hours, waiting for a deer, my fingers numb despite the gloves. The forest was still, save for the occasional rustle of a squirrel or the distant caw of a crow. It was the kind of quiet that makes you feel like the only living thing for miles. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not the soft crunch of a deer or the scamper of a fox, but heavy, deliberate steps, snapping twigs underfoot. My heart kicked up a notch. I shifted in my stand, peering through the falling snow. The light was fading, the sky a bruised purple, but I could just make out a figure moving through the trees about 20 yards away. A man. My first thought was irritation. Some idiot trespasser spooking the game I'd been waiting on all day. I leaned forward, squinting to get a better look. Something was wrong. The way he moved, it wasn't natural. His arms were pinned to his sides, rigid as boards, and his legs lifted in high, exaggerated steps like a marionette jerked by invisible strings. His head was tilted slightly, and even from this distance I could see his eyes, wide, glassy, unblinking, staring straight ahead. He wasn't dressed for the woods, no jacket, no hat, just a thin shirt and pants that looked too clean for someone trudging through snow. My irritation turned to unease. This wasn't a hunter or a hiker. This was something else. He was heading right for my tree. I gripped my rifle tighter, my pulse thudding in my ears. I told myself he was just lost, confused, maybe hypothermic. People act strange when they're freezing, but the closer he got, the worse it felt. 10 yards now. His steps didn't slow, didn't waver. He marched with purpose, his knees pumping like a soldier in a parade, but there was no rhythm to it, no humanity. His face stayed blank, those eyes locked on nothing, yet I couldn't shake the feeling he knew exactly where I was. He stopped abruptly 5 yards from the base of my tree, just froze mid-step, one leg raised like a heron. My breath caught. The snow kept falling, piling on his shoulders, his hair, but he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, as far as I could tell. The silence was suffocating now, the kind that presses against your chest. I wanted to call out, to ask what the hell he was doing, but my voice stuck in my throat. Something primal in me screamed to stay quiet. A twig snapped somewhere to my left. My eyes flicked toward the sound just for a second, but it was enough. The man moved, not walked, moved. He shot forward, covering 60 yards in a blink, faster than any human could run. I heard branches cracking, snow exploding under his feet, and then nothing. I scanned the trees, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. He was gone. But the woods weren't silent anymore. A scream tore through the air, high and guttural, not human, not animal, but something caught between. It was the sound of something dying, something that knew it was being torn apart. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the rifle like it could anchor me to reality. The scream cut off, and the silence rushed back in. My hand shook as I opened my eyes. The woods were empty again, or so I thought. Then I saw him. Below my stand, right at the base of the tree, he stood. His head was tilted back, those glassy eyes staring straight up at me. No expression, no sound, just that awful, unblinking gaze. My stomach twisted. How had he gotten there without a sound? The snow around the tree was undisturbed, no footprints, no marks. He moved again. One hand gripped the ladder bolted to the tree trunk. My heart stopped. He was climbing, slow, deliberate, his movements jerky but precise, like a spider scaling a wall. I fumbled for my pistol, my fingers clumsy in the cold, my mind screaming to do something, anything. He was halfway up now, his face still locked on mine, those eyes boring into me. I could hear his hands on the metal rungs, clank, 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 steady, unhurried. A shout rang out, distant but sharp, another hunter somewhere in the woods. The man froze. His head snapped toward the sound, unnaturally fast like an owl. For a moment, he just listened, his body rigid. Then he hopped, not climbed, not stepped, but hopped, back to the ground, landing without a sound. He turned and sprinted into the trees, gone in an instant, swallowed by the dark. I didn't wait. I unhooked my harness, nearly falling as I scrambled down the ladder. My truck was a half-mile away, and I ran the whole way, my rifle bouncing against my back, my breath ragged. I didn't look behind me. I couldn't. When I reached the truck, I locked the doors and peeled out, the tires spinning in the snow. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't been back to those woods. I don't know what I saw, but I know it wasn't human. Not the way it moved, not the way it hunted. I keep replaying it in my head, those high knee steps, that scream, those eyes. I don't sleep much anymore. Every creak in the house, every shadow outside my window makes me jump. I keep my pistol loaded on the nightstand now. Yesterday, I went to clean my gear, to try and put it behind me. My hunting pack was in the garage, untouched, since that night. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. Inside, folded neatly on top of my gear, was a thin, clean shirt, the same kind the man had been wearing. No dirt, no snow, no wear. Just sitting there like it had been placed with care. I burned it. Didn't help. Last night, I heard footsteps outside my house. Heavy, deliberate, crunching in the snow. I didn't look out the window. I couldn't. But I know they stopped right below my bedroom. And then just before dawn, I heard it again, that scream, faint but unmistakable, echoing from the woods behind my property. I'm leaving town tomorrow. I don't know where I'll go, but I can't stay here, not with those footsteps getting closer every night. The snow was thicker tonight, heavier than it had been in weeks. I'd been on the road for 2 days, crashing in a cheap motel off a back road in northern Michigan, far from home. The room smelled of mildew, and the heater rattled like it was on its last legs, but it was better than being out there, better than hearing those footsteps. I kept the curtains drawn, the door bolted, my pistol on the bedside table. Sleep still wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man, his rigid arms, his glassy stare, the way he moved like nothing human could. Around midnight, the power flickered. The heater groaned and died, plunging the room into silence. I sat up, my heart already racing. The motel was isolated, surrounded by dense woods, the kind of place where no one would hear you scream. I told myself it was just the storm, just a faulty grid. But then I heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps in the snow, slow and deliberate, circling the motel. My breath hitched. I grabbed the pistol, my hands shaking, and crept to the window. The curtains felt like lead in my fingers as I pulled them back just an inch. The parking lot was empty, the snow untouched, except for a single set of tracks leading from the woods to the edge of the building. They stopped there, right below my room. No one was in sight. I let the curtain fall, my chest tight. The footsteps started again, closer now, moving along the wall outside. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They paused, then picked up again, circling back toward the door. I backed away, aiming the pistol at the entrance. The lock was flimsy, the kind you could kick in with one good hit. I waited, every muscle tense, listening as the steps stopped right outside. Silence. Then a soft scrape, like fingernails dragging across the door. My mouth went dry. I wanted to yell, to demand who was there, but my voice wouldn't work. The scrape came again, slower, deliberate, like whoever, whatever, was out there wanted me to know they were taking their time. The doorknob rattled. Just once, a quick twist, testing it. I gripped the pistol tighter, my finger hovering over the trigger. The rattling stopped. Silence again. Then, from the woods beyond the motel, that scream, high, guttural, tearing through the night. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Something was out there, and it wasn't alone. I didn't sleep. I sat against the wall, pistol in hand, until the sun crept over the horizon. When I finally worked up the nerve to open the door, the snow outside was pristine. No tracks, no marks. But on the doorstep, folded neatly, was another shirt. Thin, clean, identical to the one from my pack. I didn't touch it. I grabbed my bag, got in my truck, and drove. I'm in a new town now, 100 miles from the last. I picked a motel in the middle of nowhere, no woods nearby, just open fields and a gas station across the road. I thought distance would help, that whatever that thing was couldn't follow me this far. I was wrong. Tonight, as I sat on the sagging motel bed, cleaning my rifle to keep my hands busy, I heard it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps in the gravel outside, slow and deliberate. No snow here, but the sound was unmistakable. I froze, my hand still on the rifle. The steps circled the building, stopping just outside my room. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The air felt heavy, like the room was closing in. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door, hard enough to rattle the frame. I grabbed the pistol, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. The knock came again, slower this time, each one echoing in my skull. I wanted to scream, to tell it to go away, but I knew better. I knew it wasn't human. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in again, heavier than before. I waited, every nerve on edge, expecting the door to burst open, expecting those glassy eyes to appear, but nothing came, just the quiet, stretching on for hours. When I finally checked outside at dawn, the gravel was undisturbed, no footprints, no sign of anyone. But on the ground, right in front of the door, was another shirt, folded, clean, waiting for me. I don't know what it wants. I don't know why it's following me, but I can't keep running forever. The footsteps are getting closer, the screams louder, and every night I feel those eyes on me watching from the dark, waiting for me to make a mistake. I'm leaving again tomorrow. I don't know where. Maybe there's nowhere far enough. Story 8. The Bear That Hunted Us. The morning air bit at my face as Braxton and I trudged through the frost-covered underbrush near Henry's Lake. The sun was barely up, painting the Idaho sky in streaks of pale orange, and our breaths puffed out in clouds. We'd been out since dawn, tracking elk, our boots crunching on the frozen ground. My bow hung heavy in my hand, arrows rattling softly in their quiver. Braxton, a few steps behind, scanned the tree line, his rifle slung over his shoulder. We were just two guys, lifelong friends, out for a hunt like we'd done 100 times before. Nothing could have prepared us for what was coming. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no rustling, just the faint whistle of wind through the pines. I stepped out from a cluster of trees, my eyes on the trail ahead, and something made my stomach lurch. A shape, massive and dark, stood just 20 yards away, half hidden in the shadows. My heart stopped. Oh crap, that's a bear. Braxton's voice cracked behind me, sharp with panic. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't just any bear. This was a grizzly, its fur matted and thick, its head low, eyes locked on us like we were prey. The grizzly didn't hesitate. It exploded toward us, a 530-pound freight train of muscle and fury, its paws thundering against the earth. Time slowed. My bow was useless. Too slow, too clumsy. I dropped it, my hands fumbling for the handgun at my hip. The bear was so close I could see the steam rising from its snout, its teeth glinting in the weak morning light. I yanked the pistol free and fired, the shots cracking through the air. 1, 2, 3. Bullets slammed into the bear's face, but it didn't stop. It didn't even flinch. The world turned to chaos. The grizzly hit me like a battering ram, its jaws clamping around my arm with a force that made my vision white out. Pain seared through me raw and electric as its teeth sank into flesh and bone. I screamed, my voice tearing through the forest. The bear shook me like a toy, lifting me off the ground and slamming me back down. My arm burned wet with blood, and I felt the sickening crunch of bone giving way. "Braxton!" I yelled, my voice barely human. I was trapped, pinned in the jaws of a nightmare. From the corner of my eye, I saw Braxton hit the ground hard, knocked back by the bear's charge. He scrambled up, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. His rifle was up in an instant, and he fired. Crack, 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 bullets ripping into the grizzly's skull and spine. The beast didn't let go. Its grip tightened, and I felt my arm twist, the muscle tearing as it yanked me again. My free hand clawed at its face, desperate, useless. I was losing ground, losing blood, losing hope. Braxton didn't stop. He reloaded, his hand shaking, and ran closer, screaming my name. He was right there, so close I could see the sweat on his face, the fear in his eyes. He jammed the rifle barrel against the grizzly's head and unloaded point blank, the muzzle flashes lighting up the beast's fur. Blood sprayed, hot and sticky, mixing with the dirt and frost. The bear roared, a sound that rattled my bones, but its grip loosened for just a second. That was my chance. I yanked my arm back, hard, feeling the flesh rip as I tore it free from the grizzly's jaws. Pain exploded through me, so intense I nearly blacked out. I stumbled to my feet, blood pouring down my arms, soaking my jacket. The bear staggered, its massive head swaying, but it wasn't done. It lunged again, its claws swiping the air where I'd been a second before. I fumbled for my gun, my fingers slick with blood, and fired again. Braxton was still shooting, his rifle barking over and over. We were a blur of motion, two men against a monster pouring everything we had into it. The grizzly's movement slowed, its roars turning to guttural grunts. We kept firing, 10 shots, 15, 20. My arm was useless, hanging limp, but I didn't stop. Neither did Braxton. We were fighting for every breath, every heartbeat. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the bear collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with a thud that shook the earth. It twitched once, then went still, its eyes glassy, blood pooling beneath it. I fell to my knees, gasping, my vision swimming. My arm was a mangled wreck, the skin torn open, bone exposed. Blood dripped onto the frost, bright red against the white. Braxton dropped his rifle and ran to me, his face ashen. "Riley, hold on," he said, his voice shaking. He ripped off his belt, wrapping it around my arm as a tourniquet, pulling it tight. The pain was unbearable, but I gritted my teeth, trying to stay conscious. He fumbled with his phone, calling for help, his words tumbling over each other. "We're near Henry's Lake. Grizzly attack. Hurry, he's bleeding bad." The next few minutes were a blur. The cold seeped into my bones, and the world felt distant, like I was sinking into a fog. Braxton stayed with me, his hands pressing on the tourniquet, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "You're gonna be okay, Riley. You hear me? You're not dying out here." I wanted to believe him, but the pain was a living thing, clawing at me, pulling me under. The longest 30 seconds of my life had stretched into eternity. The grizzly was dead, but it had left its mark on my body, on my mind, on both of us. We'd faced the beasts and walked away, but the forest felt different now. It wasn't just a place to hunt anymore. It was a place that hunted us back. Story 9, Night of Terror in Colorado. The late October air bit at my fingertips as I hefted my rifle, the weight of it familiar and grounding. My friends, Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Ellie, trudged alongside me through the Colorado wilderness, our boots crunching on a carpet of pine needles and frost-kissed leaves. We'd planned this elk hunt for months, dreaming of crisp mountain mornings and the thrill of the chase. The San Juan Mountains loomed around us, their peaks jagged against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Golden aspens shimmered in the breeze, their leaves catching the sunlight like coins tossed into the air. The first day was everything we'd hoped for. We tracked elk prints through the forest, shared quiet laughs over a crackling campfire, and swapped stories as the stars blinked into view. It felt perfect, like we'd slipped into a postcard. But perfection doesn't last in the wild. The second morning started wrong. I woke to a heaviness in the air, like the forest was holding its breath. The usual chatter of birds was gone, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed against my ears. Jake noticed it too, his brow furrowing as he scanned the trees. "Quiet today," he muttered, his voice low, like he didn't want to disturb whatever was listening. We shrugged it off, chalking it up to the unpredictability of the mountains, and set out to hunt. By mid-morning, we were deep in the forest, weaving through dense underbrush that clawed at our jackets. Ellie, always the sharpest tracker, spotted fresh elk scat and pointed us toward a clearing. That's when we saw them. 5 men stood in the open, motionless, their dark jackets blending into the shadows of the pines. They weren't hunters, no rifles, no gear, just empty hands hanging at their sides. Their faces were blank, eyes locked on us like we'd interrupted something private. I raised a hand to wave, but the gesture died in my throat. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then, as if on cue, they turned and melted into the trees, silent as ghosts. "What the hell was that?" Mike whispered, his knuckles white around his rifle. "Locals, maybe," Sarah said, but her voice trembled. "Let's keep moving." We tried to laugh it off, but the encounter stuck to us like damp cold. The forest felt different now, its beauty tainted by something I couldn't name. We pressed on, and by noon, we'd bagged a deer, a clean shot from Jake. We set to work field dressing it, the routine grounding us. But as I knelt in the dirt, my knife slicing through hide, I noticed the silence again. No birds, no wind, no rustling leaves, just our breathing and the wet sound of the blade. I glanced up, and the others were looking around too, their faces tight. Ellie's eyes darted to the trees, and I followed her gaze. Nothing, yet the back of my neck prickled like invisible eyes were boring into me. "Anyone else feel that?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Like we're being watched?" Ellie said. She didn't look at me, her eyes still scanning the forest. Jake nodded, wiping blood from his hands. "Let's finish up and get back to camp. This place is giving me the creeps." We worked faster, our movements sharp and nervous. The deer's carcass stared up at us, its glassy eyes reflecting the graying sky. By the time we hauled it back to camp, the sun was dipping low, painting the mountains in shades of bruised purple. We cooked a quick meal over the fire, but no one talked much. The laughter from the night before was gone, replaced by glances over our shoulders and the constant urge to check the shadows. Night fell hard, the kind of dark that swallows everything. I crawled into my tent, exhausted but wired, my mind replaying those blank faces in the clearing. Sleep came in fits, broken by the wind rattling the pines. Then, sometime past midnight, I snapped awake. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching through the frost just outside my tent. My heart slammed against my ribs as I lay still, straining to listen. The steps circled the camp, unhurried, like whoever it was wanted us to hear them. I clutched my knife, its handle slick with sweat, and waited for the sound to fade. It didn't. Instead, I heard something worse. A faint, metallic click. A zipper. Jake and Sarah's tent. My breath caught as the sound of canvas rustling filled the night, followed by a low, guttural noise that wasn't human. Then Sarah screamed, a sound so raw it tore through me. I scrambled out of my tent, knife in hand, as the others stumbled out too, their faces pale in the moonlight. We ran to Jake and Sarah's tent, my pulse roaring in my ears. The tent flap hung open, swaying in the breeze. Inside, Sarah was curled in a corner, her hands over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. Jake stood over her, his rifle raised, sweeping the darkness. On the ground, scrawled in blood that glistened black in the flashlight's beam, were the words, "You shouldn't have come." Next to it lay a crude doll, made of twigs and twine, its face smeared with ash, featureless except for two hollow pits where eyes should have been. "What the fuck is this?" Mike hissed, his voice shaking. "There's no one here," Jake said, but his eyes were wild. "They're gone." We searched the camp, our flashlights cutting through the dark, but found nothing. No footprints, no sign of the intruders. Just that message and the doll staring up at us like a warning. Ellie grabbed my arm, her grip bruising. "We need to leave, now." No one argued. We tore down the camp in a frenzy, shoving gear into packs with shaking hands. The forest was too quiet again, the silence pressing down like a physical weight. As we slung our packs on, a low whistle cut through the night, sharp and mocking. It came from the trees, then another, answered from the opposite direction. My stomach twisted as I realized we were surrounded. Then we saw them, the same 5 men from the clearing, stepping out from the shadows. Their faces were different now, twisted into grins that showed too many teeth. They carried weapons, clubs carved from branches, knives glinting in the moonlight, one of them swinging a rusty machete. Their eyes glinted with something feral, something that didn't belong in a human face. "Run!" Jake yelled, and we bolted. The forest became a nightmare of clawing branches and uneven ground. My lungs burned as I sprinted, the others' footsteps pounding beside me. The men didn't shout, didn't call out, just pursued, their steps steady and relentless. I could hear their breathing, too close, like they were toying with us. A branch snapped across my face, drawing blood, but I didn't stop. None of us did. We ran blindly, the darkness swallowing everything but the sound of our panic. My pack snagged on a tree and I tore it off, leaving it behind. Sarah stumbled and Mike hauled her up, his face grim. The whistles followed us, low and taunting, echoing through the trees like a pack of wolves circling prey. I don't know how long we ran, minutes, maybe hours, until Jake hissed for us to stop. We'd reached a ravine, its muddy walls steep and slick. Without a word, we slid down into it, pressing ourselves into the cold earth, our breaths ragged. Above us, the men searched. Their footsteps crunched closer, then paused. I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. A shadow moved at the edge of the ravine, and I saw one of them, a tall figure with a knife, his head tilted like he was listening. He stood there for what felt like forever, then turned and walked away. The whistles faded, and the forest went silent again. We stayed in that ravine until dawn, too terrified to move. When the first light broke through the trees, we crawled out, bruised and shaking. The forest was empty, no sign of the men or our campsite. It was like the night had erased itself. We hiked back to civilization, our bodies aching, our minds frayed. At the ranger station, we told them everything. They listened, their faces skeptical, but concerned. They searched the area but found nothing. No blood, no doll, no trace of the men. They suggested we'd stumbled into some kind of territorial dispute, maybe with locals who didn't take kindly to outsiders. But I saw the look in their eyes. They didn't believe us, not really. Back home, the memory of that night clings to me like damp rot. I can still hear those footsteps, see that blood-scrawled message, feel the weight of those hollow eyes on that doll. I don't know what those men were, but they weren't just locals. Something was wrong with them, something that didn't belong in this world. I haven't been back to those woods since, and I never will. Story 10 mid-rifle season in Pennsylvania was my favorite time of year, and I'd been hunting these woods behind my grandfather's farm since I was a kid. The storm had turned the world into a swirling white haze, but I loved the challenge of hunting in snow. It muffled sound, made tracks clearer, and gave the forest an eerie, quiet beauty. My tree stand, tucked just beyond the old farmhouse, maybe 150 yards out, was waiting for me. I adjusted my blaze orange vest, checked my rifle, and settled in. The familiar creak of the wooden platform greeting me like an old friend. The sky was still pitch black, the kind of dark that swallows everything. I couldn't see much beyond the faint outline of the ridge to my right, but I could hear. The forest was alive with small sounds, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, the soft thud of snow falling from branches. Deer, I figured, or maybe a fox. Early morning was prime time for movement, and I told myself to stay calm, to focus. But something felt off. The noises weren't random, they were too steady, too rhythmic, like footsteps circling just out of sight. I shifted in my stand, my heart picking up. The cold bit at my fingertips as I gripped my rifle tighter. It's just the woods, I told myself, just wildlife. But then, clear as anything, I heard it. A distinct crunch, crunch, crunch coming from the ridge. Not the erratic scamper of a deer, but deliberate heavy steps. My pulse thumped in my ears. Could it be Grandpa? He sometimes checked on me out here, but his house was dark when I passed it. No lights, no sign of life. No one else should be out here this early, not on private land. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer now. I fumbled for my flashlight, my gloved hands clumsy in the cold. Flipping it on, I swept the beam toward the ridge. The light caught nothing but snow and bare trees, but the footsteps stopped dead the second the beam hit. The silence was worse than the sound, thick, unnatural, like the forest was holding its breath. I squinted, my eyes straining in the dimness. There, on the hillside, was a shape, just a bump, barely noticeable, but it didn't belong. My stomach twisted. I kept the light steady, but whatever it was didn't move. Dawn was creeping in slow and gray, softening the edges of the world. I could make out more now. Trees, rocks, the curve of the ridge, and there, between two pines, was something that made my blood run cold. A mound of greenish-brown fabric, like an old hunting jacket, draped over a branch. It wasn't there yesterday. I'd hunted this spot for years. I knew every inch of this land. That wasn't natural. That wasn't right. I raised my rifle, using the scope to get a closer look. My hands shook, not from the cold. The mound wasn't just fabric. It was a jacket, sure, but it was covering something. Someone, a person, lying flat on the ridge, no blaze orange, no sign of a legal hunter. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was private land. Trespassing was one thing, but this felt wrong, like they were hiding, watching. I lowered the rifle and grabbed my phone, keeping my eyes on the figure. My fingers were numb as I dialed Grandpa's number. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy but sharp. "What's wrong, kid?" "Someone's out here. I whispered, my voice barely audible over the wind. On the ridge, no orange, they're just lying there. Stay put, he said, all sleep gone from his tone. I'm coming. I hung up, my eyes locked on the figure. The light was better now, and I could see more details. A rifle glinting faintly in the snow, the outline of a body perfectly still, too still. I kept my own rifle trained on them, my finger off the trigger but ready. The waiting was agony. Every gust of wind, every creak of the trees felt like a threat. I didn't dare move, didn't dare make a sound. Finally, the sky was bright enough to see clearly. I couldn't wait any longer. Grandpa was on his way, but I needed to know who this was, what they were doing. I climbed down from the stand, my boots sinking into the snow, and started up the ridge, moving slow, keeping low. My rifle stayed at the ready, my eyes never leaving the figure. As I got closer, I saw him, a man maybe in his 50s, sprawled out between the bushes, greasy beard, gray wool hat, an old camo jacket that looked like it hadn't been washed in years. His rifle lay across his chest, and he was sleeping, snoring softly, oblivious to the world. I stopped, maybe 10 feet away, my breath catching. Who the hell falls asleep in a blizzard on someone else's land? No orange, no permission, no reason to be here. I glanced back toward the farmhouse, hoping to see Grandpa's truck, but the snow was too thick. I was alone with this guy. I stomped my boot hard, letting out a sharp whistle. The man's eyes snapped open, wild and bloodshot. He scrambled to sit up, his rifle clattering against the ground. "Whoa, whoa," he said, holding up his hands, a crooked smile spreading across his face. "Easy, kid. I got lost, all right. Was with a group, got turned around in the storm." I didn't buy it for a second. His voice was too smooth, his smile too forced. There wasn't another hunter for miles. No tracks, no voices, no signs of a group. And that smile, it didn't reach his eyes. They were cold, calculating, like he was sizing me up. "You're on private land," I said, keeping my rifle steady. "No orange, no permission. Who are you?" His smile faltered just for a moment. Like I said, got lost, fell asleep waiting for my buddies. Didn't mean no harm. I heard the crunch of tires on snow, Grandpa's truck. Relief flooded me, but I didn't lower my gun. The man's eyes darted toward the sound, and for the first time, he looked nervous. "Look, kid, no need to make a big deal out of this. I'll just stay right there," I snapped, stepping closer. His rifle was still on the ground, but I wasn't taking chances. Grandpa's boots crunched through the snow as he approached, his own shotgun in hand. His face was grim, his eyes locked on the stranger. "Who's this?" Grandpa asked, his voice low and hard. "Says he got lost," I said, "but I don't believe him." Grandpa studied the man, his jaw tight. "No hunting party out here, no tracks but his. And no orange? You're not that stupid, are you?" The man's smile was gone now. He stood slowly, hands still raised, but there was something in his posture. Too tense, too ready. All right, he said. "I messed up. I'll go." "Not yet," Grandpa said. He nodded to me. "Keep an eye on him." I did, my rifle steady as Grandpa circled around, checking the ground. He stopped, crouching near the man's spot. "What's this?" he muttered, brushing snow away. Underneath was a small pile of gear, a knife, a coil of rope, a pair of binoculars. My stomach dropped. That wasn't hunting gear, that was something else. "You been watching my land?" Grandpa's voice was like steel. How long? The man didn't answer, his eyes darting between us. I could feel the truth in the air, heavy and sickening. This wasn't a lost hunter. He'd been here before, watching, waiting, for what I didn't know. But the thought made my skin crawl. Grandpa grabbed the man's arm, yanking him to his feet. "Move!" he growled, pushing him toward the road. I followed, my rifle still trained on him, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think. A few neighbors had gathered near the road, drawn by the commotion. Their faces were grim, their whispers carrying on the wind. Someone must have called the cops, because sirens were already closing in. The police arrived, 2 officers stepping out into the snow. They searched the man, finding no other weapons, just the rifle and that creepy pile of gear. He kept up his story, lost, confused, no harm meant. But the officers weren't buying it either. They cuffed him, reading off charges, trespassing, stalking. I watched as they loaded him into the cruiser, his eyes locking on mine for just a second. That smile flickered back, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow. Grandpa put a hand on my shoulder as the cruiser pulled away. "You all right, kid?" I nodded, but I wasn't. The forest didn't feel like mine anymore. Every shadow, every rustle felt like a threat now. I looked back at the ridge, at the spot where he'd been lying, and wondered how many times he'd been there before, watching us, watching me. I climbed back into my tree stand the next morning, but it wasn't the same. The snow was still falling, the woods still quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, just beyond the light. I kept my rifle close and my eyes on the ridge. Stalker, I found sleeping while I was hunting. Let's not meet again. Story 11, The Whispering Ram. The high desert of Oregon stretches out like a frozen ocean, all sagebrush and silence under a gray winter sky. My boots crunch on frost-kissed gravel as Reggie, my English setter, bounds ahead, his nose low and tail whipping. Days like this are why we hunt. Crisp air, endless canyons, and the thrill of chasing chukar through the hills. Reggie's trained for this, his instincts sharp as my old shotgun. An hour into our hike, the world feels right. Just me, my dog, and the wild. We descend into a rocky gully, the kind carved by ancient rivers, now dry as bone. Reggie's pace slows, his ears perk, and he freezes mid-step, hackles rising like a ridge of spines. A low growl rumbles from his throat, aimed at something in the creek bed below. I ease forward, peering around a boulder, expecting a coyote or maybe a bobcat. Instead, I see it. A bighorn ram, massive and still, sitting upright like a dog. Its head is tilted, eyes locked straight ahead, unblinking. It's wrong. Bighorns don't sit like that, and they sure as hell don't stay calm with a dog nearby. Reggie bolts down the slope, barking furiously, his teeth bared. The ram doesn't flinch. It just sits there, 25 feet away, staring through me with eyes that seem too alive, too aware. My heart stutters. Bighorns are skittish. They'd rather leap cliffs than face a snarling dog. But this one? It's unshaken, almost confident. Reggie lunges closer, snapping at the air, and the ram's calm breaks. Its lips quiver, and a slick, milky mucus drips from its mouth. Then it makes a sound, a low guttural hum that's not animal. It's human. "Reggie, here!" I shout, my voice sharp with panic. He ignores me, locked on the ram, his barks echoing off the rocks. The hum grows louder, shaping into words, halting and strained. "Don't go." My knees buckle. The ram's eyes glisten, wet and alive, as its voice cracks, desperate. go. Please." The words build into a scream, raw and sobbing, like a person trapped in terror. I'm frozen, my shotgun useless in my hands, as the ram's cries turn hysterical. "Please don't go!" Reggie snaps at my pack, yanking me out of my trance. I stumble, dropping to one knee as the ram's voice surges into a roar, deep, unnatural, shaking the air until my vision blurs. My chest tightens. I can't breathe. Reggie tugs harder, his teeth clamped on my coat, dragging me back. "Go!" I scream, scrambling to my feet. Half crawling, half sprinting, I follow him up the gully, the ram's roars chasing us like a storm. The sound is everywhere, vibrating in my bones until we burst onto the ridge. Then, silence. The howling cuts off, sharp as a blade. Gasping, I collapse against a rock, my hands bleeding from the climb. Reggie pants beside me, his eyes wide but steady. I gulp water from my canteen, hands shaking as I bandage my cuts. The desert is quiet again, just wind and sagebrush, but my pulse won't slow. We make it to the truck by late afternoon, Reggie pressed close to my side. Driving home, I keep glancing at him, grateful for his instincts. He saved me from whatever that was. That night, I wake in a cold sweat, the ram's voice echoing in my skull. "Don't go, please." It's been 2 weeks, and I can't shake it. Reggie sleeps closer now, his warmth a small anchor against the dread. I don't hunt that canyon anymore, but the memory claws at me. Whatever was in that ram wasn't just an animal. It felt like a person trapped, screaming to be remembered. A month later, I'm back in the hills. Not the same gully, never that gully, but a different range farther west. Reggie's with me, though he's more cautious now, his tale less lively. I tell myself it's just a hunt, just another day. But my grip on the shotgun is tighter than it used to be. The air's colder today, the sky heavier, like it's holding its breath. We're tracking Chukar again, following faint trails through the scrub. Reggie's nose is down, but his ears twitch, alert to something I can't hear. We crest a low rise, and there it is again, another bighorn ram. Not the same one. This one's smaller with chipped horns, but it's sitting upright, just like before. My stomach lurches. Reggie growls low and steady, but he doesn't charge this time. He stays by my side, his body tense. The ram's eyes lock onto mine, and I swear they're the same eyes. Too human, too knowing. I take a step back, my boot scraping the dirt. The ram's head tilts, and its mouth opens, leaking that same milky drip. "Stay," it whispers, the words slithering through the air. "Stay with me." I don't wait for more. "Reggie, let's go," I hiss, turning fast. He follows without hesitation, and we move, not running, but not lingering either. The ram's voice trails after us, faint but clear. "Stay, please." It doesn't roar this time, but the words burrow into me heavy and cold. We reach the truck in record time, and I don't look back. At home, I scrub my hands raw, like I can wash away the memory. Reggie's quieter now, his eyes tracking me as I pace the cabin. I don't sleep that night. The ram's voice loops in my head, blending with the first one screams. 2 rams, 2 voices, both begging. I don't know what they are, but they're not just animals. Something's in them. Something that knows me, something that wants me to stay. Spring comes, and I can't stay away from the desert. It's in my blood, even if it scares me now. Reggie's reluctant, but he follows me out, loyal as ever. This time, I pick a new spot, miles from the last 2. The hills are softer here, dotted with juniper and less jagged rock. I tell myself it's safe, that the rams were a fluke, a bad memory. but my hands shake as I load the shotgun. We're deep in a shallow valley when Reggie stops again. His growl is different this time, sharp, almost pained. I follow his gaze to a cluster of rocks ahead, another ram. This one's bigger, its horns curling tight, and it's sitting upright, staring straight at me. My mouth goes dry. Reggie presses against my leg, whining softly. The ram's eyes glint, and its lips part, dripping that familiar mucus. "You came back," it says, each word slow and deliberate, like it's savoring them. I don't move. My feet feel rooted to the ground. The ram's voice shifts, growing softer, almost tender. "You always come back." Reggie barks, sharp and desperate, snapping me out of it. I stumble back, raising the shotgun, but my hands are useless, trembling too hard to aim. The ram doesn't move, just watches, its voice dropping to a whisper. "Stay. Forever." "Run, Reggie!" I shout, and we bolt. The ram's voice follows, not loud, but piercing, weaving through the air like smoke. Forever, forever. It's still there when we reach the truck, fainter but unending. I drive faster than I should, the desert blurring past. Reggie's panting fills the cab, and I realize I'm muttering under my breath, "Not going back, not going back." It's summer now, and I haven't hunted since. The desert calls, but I ignore it. Reggie's different too. He flinches at shadows, sleeps pressed against me every night. I keep the shotgun by the door, loaded, though I don't know what good it'll do. The ram's voices haunt me, each one clearer than the last. Don't go. Stay. Forever. They're not just echoes. They're invitations, demands, promises. I don't know what's out there in those canyons, but it knows me. It's waiting. Last night, I dreamed of the desert. Not the real one, but something darker, endless. A ram sat on a ridge, upright, its eyes glowing under a starless sky. It spoke my name, soft and certain, like it owned me. I woke with Reggie whining, his nose pressed to my hand. The cabin was quiet, but I felt it. Something watching, something patient. I don't know how long I can stay away. The desert's still out there, and so are they. Story 12. The Wyoming Grizzly Attack. The air was crisp, the kind of September chill that settles into your bones if you sit still too long. I was perched against a boulder in Wyoming's upper Green River Basin, my binoculars pressed to my eyes, scanning the ridges for elk. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, and the world felt quiet. Too quiet, maybe. I'd been bull hunting these parts for years, a transplant from Georgia who'd learned to read the land like a book. But that day, the pages turned on me. I was alone, my hunting partners a good mile off, setting up camp. My bow rested beside me, useless at this range, but my 10mm pistol sat snug in its holster, a cold comfort against the vastness of the wilderness. I'd seen bears before, black bears mostly, skittish things that'd rather run than fight. Grizzlies, though, they were different. Stories floated around the hunting lodges, tales of jaws that could crush bone and claws that tore through flesh like paper. I'd always shrugged them off. Just stories, I thought, until they weren't. It started with a rustle in the trees, faint at first, like the wind kicking up, but the air was still. My gut tightened, and I lowered the binoculars, squinting into the dense pines. Something moved, big, deliberate. Then I saw her, a sow grizzly, massive, her fur rippling with each step, two cubs trailing behind her on a game trail. They were headed right for me, maybe 50 yards out. My heart kicked into overdrive, pounding so hard I swore it'd give me away. I stayed low, hoping they'd pass, but the wind betrayed me. It shifted, carrying my scent straight to them. The cubs froze, noses twitching, then bolted into the brush like they'd been spooked by a ghost. The sow, though, she locked onto me. Her head swung low, ears pinned back, and those black eyes bored into mine. I knew that look. It wasn't curiosity. It was hunger, or maybe rage. Either way, I was in her world now, and she didn't want me here. I didn't think, I acted. My hand flew to the pistol, ripping it free. I fired 2 shots into the air, sharp cracks that echoed off the mountains. Most animals would have run, not her. She charged, a freight train of muscle and fury, closing the gap faster than I could have imagined. The ground shook under her weight, and I scrambled back, my boots slipping on the loose dirt. She was on me in seconds, her breath hot and sour, her jaws snapping shut around my left thigh. Pain exploded white hot, like someone had driven a spike through my leg. I hit the ground hard, the boulder at my back the only thing keeping me upright. Her teeth sank deeper, grinding against bone, and she shook me like a rag doll. I could feel my flesh tearing, warm blood soaking my pants. My mind screamed one thing: fight or you're dead. The pistol was still in my hand, but the first shot jammed. Of course it did. Murphy's Law in the middle of a nightmare. The bear thrashed, dragging me across the dirt, her growls vibrating in my chest. I clawed at the slide, clearing the jam with shaking hands, and aimed point blank at her head. I squeezed the trigger once, twice, 3 times. Each shot was deafening, the recoil jarring my arm, but I kept firing. Bullets punched into her skull, and for a moment, nothing changed. She was still there, still tearing into me, her weight crushing the air from my lungs. Then, like a switch flipped, she went limp. Her massive body slumped, rolling off me into the dirt. I lay there gasping, my leg a mangled mess, blood pooling beneath me. I knew I'd killed that bear, I told myself, the words a lifeline to keep me from slipping into shock. But I wasn't out of it yet. The cubs were still out there, and where there's cubs, there's trouble. I had to move. I dragged myself to a nearby tree, every inch agony. My leg wouldn't hold weight, but I used my arms, pulling myself along, leaving a trail of blood in the dirt. The forest was silent now. No birds, no wind, just my ragged breathing and the thud of my heart. I don't know how long it took, maybe minutes, maybe an hour, but I made it to a clearing where I knew my buddies would find me. I collapsed behind a pine, my vision swimming, and waited. When they found me, I must have looked like death itself. My friend Jake's face went pale, but he didn't hesitate. He and the others patched me up as best they could, wrapping my leg to slow the bleeding. They carried me, half-conscious, over a mile through rough terrain to the off-road vehicle. Every jolt sent fresh waves of pain through me, but I gritted my teeth and held on. An ambulance was waiting at the trailhead, its lights flashing in the dusk like some kind of beacon. They rushed me to Pinedale, where doctors worked fast to stitch me up. Deep punctures, torn muscle, but no shattered bones. I'd live. Later, in the hospital, I learned I wasn't alone. 2 other hunters had been attacked that week. Grizzlies coming out of nowhere, driven by hunger or territory or something we'll never fully understand. I'd been lucky. Damn lucky. My pistol, my reflexes, maybe just dumb chance had turned a death sentence into a story. But lying there, staring at the ceiling, I kept seeing those eyes, that charge. The moment I became prey. Every hunter's worst nightmare had come for me, and I'd walked away, barely